I very highly recommend their podcast and their Substack, the links to which are in the show notes to this episode. So, if you're ready to be exposed to several information hazards at once, then listen on. Enjoy. So for this episode, we're joined by Dave from Tookies Mag and the associated Sidebar podcast. Dave chose this book, which is Programmed to Kill by David. I keep wanting to say David McCarricker because I've been listening to a lot of Theory Underground, but it's definitely not. David McGowan. I'm pretty tired. I'm definitely going to refer to him as David McCarricker at least once in this episode, and I just want to reinforce to listeners that David McCarricker is not a person who writes books about satanic pedophile, mind control, assassin, CIA. But yeah, David McGowan. It's an intense book. It was 350 pages of the equivalent of a cork board with lots and lots of black and white grainy photographs pasted on it, connected by spools of red yarn, with the occasional courtroom drama. Why did you pick this book, or why did you suggest this book to us, David?
Well, I regret selecting a little bit. It was very interesting. I put forward The Diary of Nicholas Cresswell, which is a fun adventure, high seas sailing kind of historical travelogue. And then at some point, me and some of the degenerates in the Book Club from Hell Discord mentioned this book, and we started talking because I just picked it up because I was doing some research into a minor sub-community called parapolitics, parapolitical thinkers, writers, podcasters. And this book is kind of I don't want to say a Bible, it's an oft-referenced tome in those circles, and it's almost like it's like the essential text, right? So if you go to certain circles, it's like, oh, have you read Spanish? Certain circles, it's, oh, have you read Capital? Some circles, it's this is like initiating text. Yeah.
I haven't frequented those parapolitical circles. I'm now more aware of them, especially after Tookies Mag Sidebar podcast did an episode on parapolitics. I've been more interested in them, but I haven't joined those communities or lurked much. I've let you contaminate yourself with them and bring that information to me in podcast format. But now I've read a foundational text.
We have a situation here.
I recall you saying in your podcast episode on parapolitics that this book is so highly regarded in certain circles that it is its own abbreviation. People refer to what would be a PTK, Programmed to Kill, and it's understood without explanation that they are referring to this august tome.
Hey.
Yeah, it's a foundational text. So in parapolitics, I guess in summary, what historically is just a term that means politics conducted through unofficial channels. I forget the writer's name now. David, I think it was another David actually. But anyway, what it is as a community now over the last 3 years or so has become increasingly popular. It's a vaguely left-wing, vaguely people in sort of a Marxist mental framework. I don't mean that in the boomer sense. I mean many would self-describe as Marxist. That have a conspiratorial lens that they view the world through. And so I just found it interesting because I came across some of the ideas that are in this book years ago on a different from a slightly different political perspective, and some of it actually completely by accident, which maybe I can share as we go through it. Like I actually came across some of these from people who claimed to have some knowledge of it way back, like 8 years ago. But anyway, so I had some interest in some of these ideas. Never the serial killer side, though. Like for me, some of the concepts around like Epstein.
So
What's new and
pedophilia as a
exciting
method
around
of
here?
political control,
I don't know. You
sex
tell
as a
me.
method of political control,
I've been here
Vito
too long.
Dominandi,
You don't like
shout out,
being
friend of the
here.
show,
This is Hong Kong.
E. Michael
Like it
Jones.
doesn't come into it.
Well, let's
Some of
begin
those
here,
ideas
then. Who are
I'm more
you?
familiar
I'm
with,
not
but
who you
then
think I
serial
am.
I've always found very
Just as the mirror is
uninteresting
not
for
always
some
just
reason.
a
You know,
reflection
my
of what you see.
girlfriend and then
I
wife
do not belong here.
and other girls I've known, they
What about
love
you?
serial killers.
I'm
They love
here
learning
on
about them.
business.
following them. I always found that media a little tedious.
Yeah.
This kind of flipped my brain on that.
Yeah, I've never been hugely interested in serial killers, but I've listened to death metal for long enough that I just have quite a good working knowledge of particularly US serial killers from listening to US death metal bands. It's just seeped into my brain subliminally. So I was more comfortable with that. I knew a lot less about the international pedophile ring conspiracies when it came to this book. That was more of an eye-opener. Regarding a topic which I've more or less intentionally avoided up until the point when I read 350 pages dedicated in large part to joining together in a patchwork many different pedophile conspiracies. Well, I say conspiracies, like also actual cases.
Yeah, I think maybe that's something to say up front. This is an extremely interesting book, but extremely disorganized, and he has a ton of really solid facts and real clear cases, like you say. And then there's also a lot more I don't know what the word would be, wishy-washy. There's a lot of instances where there might be something in there somewhere. I'm like, I just think he's totally off base. But it's an interesting book, and it's one I'm glad I read. Maybe a question to think about as we go through this is would we recommend other people read it? Because I'm pretty torn on that, actually. I think maybe the summary might be the better way to take this book in.
Yeah, in terms of recommendations, we can go into it in more detail towards the end of the episode, but yeah, this is I guess it's for a very particular type of person. Like basically everything we read for this show. There'll be a group of people, a small minority, who will really get a kick out of it, and probably the majority of people, if you gave it to them, everything from not even the content of the book, just the front cover, which looks like some bits of flesh stitched together with the names
You
of
are not
serial
much of a
killers
help.
superimposed
Sorry.
over it.
Okay,
It's a really grainy,
follow
kind
me.
of shitty looking image as well. It's just everything about the book is unpleasant.
I think it's the torso with a pentagram carved into it, isn't it? If you look
Is it?
closely, it's a pentagram, I think. On
Okay,
his torso,
okay.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, I tried to get the physical edition of this, but it was delivered to an address ages away from me, so I also read a PDF, like a kind of shitty PDF of it.
Yeah.
Was it
Which feels
delivered on
like
a Walper
the
Snicket?
most authentic way to experience this book.
It's available for free on the Internet Archive.
Yeah, that's how I got it.
Yeah.
So, actually, before we start properly, David, do you have anything you want to shill? Well, I mean, I say, like, there are at least two things that you're involved with, Tookie's Mag and your novella, that I think you definitely should shill. If there's anything also in addition to those you want to talk about, please do.
Oh, thank you. I think what people like are interested in this kind of content would
There's
like a
the
lot
idea.
is we have Tookie's Mag on YouTube or Tookie's Book Club as is listed on Spotify and other places. It's just a podcast series where we focus on a lot of his book reviews, some of his culture commentary type stuff. We did something people that listen to your stuff, the most Book Club from Hell-esque coverage we've done is probably the Parapolitics episode that you mentioned, Jack, and the Punishing by Justin Moan, who is the guy who infamously beheaded his father, had a lot of writings before that. We usually don't dive into that kind of material, but we did that time. It was pretty hilarious. It's a literally schizophrenic novella that is about essentially all humanity lives in China in a fake high school program, and then is sent to hell when they turn 18. So fascinating book, and we have a lot of fun on there. I'd say we're a little more shitposty than you guys in general, but we try to take the in terms of the giving everyone a fair shake. And then on the writing side, yeah, I do. I have the novella In Providence out, which is I guess a slightly science fiction-y, low-level science fiction, post-apocalyptic novella. It's actually based and inspired by. It's a Weird Tales version of The Diary of Professor Cresswell, which is why I initially had showed that. I thought that would be a fun way to tie in. And I do essays on the Tukey Mag Substack, so you can look that up. It's on our links on our YouTube channel as well.
And where can our listeners find your novella? Do you have a personal website or outside?
It's Amazon. I just went with the easy way.
So what should they type into?
I'll include links to all these things too in the show notes.
Yes, nice.
Thank you. Yep, just in Providence. I don't think there's any other in Providence. I think there's a band called In Providence.
We have a situation here.
Folks, that should be easy to find me.
Nice. Yeah, go check out the novella in Tukey's Mags. I recently listened to the episode on Skibbity Toilet from Tukey's Mag, and I was completely blown away. I went and watched. I haven't finished watching Skibbity Toilet, but I could just feel
Your powers of over-interpretation when it comes to Skibbity Toilet are absolutely phenomenal.
Gabe admitted he never
Gabe
watched
did a
it
wonderful
after
job.
that.
Is that his name, right? Gabe or Gabriel? Like, he did a wonderful job unpacking that whole thing.
No, he hadn't watched any of it. That's what he confessed after publicly. He said, "Oh yeah, I never saw it before we talked."
But he nailed it. There's this like, what was the term? It's something to do with like brain rot.
Yeah.
As a genre of content.
The two co-hosts, Cap and Gabe, they're geniuses. I'm so lucky. I completely stumbled across them. Like we just ran into each other and decided to go for it.
Nice.
Kind of worked.
Nice. That's cool. So that's really cool. I would encourage everybody to go and check out Tukey's Mag on Substack and their podcast episodes
And the
on
Sidebar
YouTube.
podcast, which is great.
We've got a hatchet to bury, don't we, as well, with the Tukey's Mag Discord.
Do we?
we've got a war. We've got this is the fourth intifada between BZFH and Tukey's Mag.
The bloodshed ends now.
It ends now.
It's the Treaty of Versailles.
Yeah. We made our
Nothing bad will happen after this.
nothing.
Stirring shit.
No, it's good.
But
I
yes,
think
people should definitely check out
Tukey's
Mag and the Sidebar podcast. You guys, you're all very close readers, and you go into a great deal of detail about a very, very wide range of books. Your most recent episode, I think, was on Give Up the Ghost by PCM Christ.
Yeah.
Just a very, very close reading of a book that, if you're not part of certain Twitter circles, you probably wouldn't be aware of. So, yeah, really, really cool podcast and well worth checking out.
Yeah, we set up knowing we were probably going to get 500 subscribers ever, and we actually got more than that. So it's funny. We have a very clear mission to build a certain kind of culture. So I think that kind of sustains you.
What's your mission in that respect? What sort of culture are you guys aiming to
Global
build
communism.
around?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually pedophilicity.
Industrial eschatology.
So my mission statement in getting it started was to create a living culture, and by that I mean rejecting, internet-mediated culture has this way of trapping us into the historics and the greats. Like if you go onto BookTube, YouTube Book Talk, you'll find 100 new videos in the last 24 hours about who is H.P. Lovecraft. Whoa, who who wrote Conan?
Guess what he called his cat?
Yeah, exactly. It's like this maelstrom whirlpool from hell that just sucks everything into it, and I just can't listen to another one of those freaking videos. I need. And so we tried just to cover only things that come out in the last 2 years.
Right.
Small presses. And stuff
So
like
what
that.
you mean by living culture is so like fighting back against the. I guess it's a bit monotonous, I suppose. Of course, the classics are classics for a reason, right? But what about what's happening now? What's cool that's coming out now?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very of. Is it Jack Ma? No, Mike Ma.
Mike
Not
Ma?
Jack Ma. Mike Ma. Yeah, harassment architecture.
Friend of the show, Jack Ma.
I feel like there's been a few of the books that we've covered, or authors that we've covered, that have a bit of a. Not necessarily a disdain for like older stuff. Oh, no. Mike Marr definitely has a disdain for all the things, it seems, if I'm not misremembering. But yeah, like, not a disdain for older things necessarily, but an embracing of like the frontier, new things. Almost like futurist, as in futurismo.
Yeah.
The
cool.
inspiration. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's really cool. Sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say the angle of the inspiration was from a similar, to a completely different thinker, but friend of a buddy of mine, Michael Lindsay, I say A Living Religion, which had some minor virality. Maybe you guys will see it. If not, I would highly recommend it. He writes under the name Thought Fox on Substack. He has a book coming out of the same name, and it just that one's more focused on spirituality, but the same idea of unless you have constant, steady new experiences, natural experiences, deteriorating internal effect. And anyways, I'm just to go a totally different tangent, but it's the same line of thought of what you were just saying about sort of this frontier spirit.
And do you feel as though you and your team and your audience now that you're building is like where would you rate your progress so far? How do you feel about it? Building a living culture.
In the grand scheme, you look at Skibbity Toilet, comes out and it gets 50 million views in 10 seconds. We're small, but we're a lot more than we were a year or two ago. And we're pretty critical too. I think that's the other thing that distinguishes us from the other aspect of that maelstrom of internet mediated culture, is that everything is a backpat and a you review me, I review you suck me, I suck you. Author interviews, nothing against, huge shout out, friend of the show, Book Club from Heaven. I think that's awesome to do positive book interviews, but a lot of times it's like the person hasn't read the book, the person hasn't thought about the book. I see it everywhere. It's very low effort, and it's just like, this will get me X Twitter followers, and we will tear stuff apart for people that are bigger than us, like I've seen you guys do before. And I just think that is such a cultural contribution comparatively to this, what the internet algorithm will promote.
Yeah, circle jerking. Anti-circle jerk.
Yeah, that's
or at least like cynical circle jerk.
Forming a cynical circle jerk together now.
Yeah, we're cynical just like you. So yeah, that's really interesting. I think it's great. There's a lot of really interesting stuff out on the frontier. Obviously, the business model side of things is a little bit hard to figure out, because like if you've heard of Ryan Holiday, he's this stoic dude. He's got, how many books does this motherfucker have about stoicism? It's like, how many times can you really rehash that? And apparently he's got like 4 books or something, guy's best-selling author, and has this, it's like, yeah, but come on, man, it's like, that stuff's been around for 3,000 years. Like, I think we get it. Like, I don't know, being out on the frontier of the long tail with our podcast has been a really interesting experience, and I think our listeners appreciate the irresponsible exposure to just completely batshit ideas.
To actually anything we can get our hands on.
I've seen them in the Discord. They're a bunch of weirdos. The stuff they recommend is, you guys, yeah, it's pretty
out there. Yeah.
It's a good combination of books I actually want to read, and then books that I know they're recommending because they know they'll make us angry.
Yeah, it's a nice combo, actually.
So in terms of that brings us around, actually.
Back to the
segue
book.
into expectations for this book. Unless there's more you want to say, David, about
No, I'm totally good.
projects
I
you
appreciate
feed
it.
All right. And actually for listeners, we'll hopefully be getting David back on to talk about his novella.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah.
I've got a copy inbound, and I've got the PDF, so... And we'll change up Book Club from Heaven by just mangling David when he comes on. Just having the
we'll
most
just rip into him.
unpleasant interview we could possibly have.
That's actually our first live torture session.
2.5 hours of screamed abuse.
We actually track him down and start waterboarding him. Please let me go. For everybody listening, it's I'm playing on a. So David, being the guest of honor, has hometown advantage, and I'm down with a pretty severe handicap of being really late at night. So if I start just like saying stuff from an incredibly good wedding that I just went to, and I had to fly. Hungover, just got off the plane, and then and it's really late. So if I'm delirious or I slur my words, it's neither diabetes nor alcohol. It's just me being tired, and so
Levi has situated himself in hell so that he can talk about the insights derived from Program to Kill by David McGowan. So, David, you go first. What were your expectations going into this book? What did you know about it? What did you heard about it? What did you think you were going to get? How were you feeling about beginning to read it?
Well, I expected a pretty straight description of serial killing and then an accusation that the CIA controlled them. And that is a big part of the book, but it's not everything. It also covers... I guess I also expected to be better structured. And maybe that's maybe the biggest out on Front Street line to put out there is the organization is very chaotic, the grammar is subpar. There's a lot of, if I had a penny for every missed possessive apostrophe in this book,
Very generous.
I'd have like $20. It's still good. It's completely legible. It's readable. Most people that aren't like into writing or grammar Nazis wouldn't give a crap. But you know, it's a little bit more underground in that sense, I guess you could say, than I expected.
It's not.
And so that was my expectation going in.
But it's still
not Timothy Dexter's glittering prose.
Yeah, and
Watch out!
that's what I expected. And then I expected to probably be a little more skeptical of some of it. He actually, and I'm curious how this worked for you guys. You know, the big two chunks of it. The first like third is much more focused on the idea of pedophile conspiracies and pedophilia as a means of political control. And the second the majority of it is a lot of like description of serial killers. And that really shocked me that it was much less. There's much more. There's a concept in fiction writing. You guys have probably heard of. I've done my research. Now you have to as well, right? But like you just dump your research on. It's like if you're writing about spaceships, you just dump
It's called science fiction author syndrome.
yeah.
It's much less. What's the word? Not amalgamated. It's much less synthesized.
We have a
Times like a bunch of Wikipedia papers stitched together.
I should say this was written in 2002, was it? So this was, that may explain some of it. This was earlier, and his research was pretty much all manual, in-person, bootstrap, and
Yeah, now you can jump on YouTube and you can just watch recordings of like trials. US and stuff. It's crazy.
dude, imagine this guy on 9/11. You know this book was 90% done, 98% done.
He was fucking nuts. Yeah. Having a field day.
Levi, do you want to go take it?
We have a
Yeah,
situation
I was a little bit surprised about by it in terms of like the date. It was because we're living in the aftermath of all of that like Pizzagate stuff and all that
And Epstein.
sort of thing. Yeah, and Epstein.
Just imagine if he was around for Epstein.
Yeah, and I was thinking like, is this one of those books that the people who were involved with those conspiracy theories and riots and stuff or whatever. Do they all know about this? I guess it'd be if when we get around to talking about parapolitics, I'd be really interested to hear like David's perspective on that, because it just seemed too eerily like some of the stuff coming out of that whole series of events. I was like, oh, is this guy one of the founding fathers of Pizzagate, the proto Pizzagate subculture? So I was just going in, I don't know. I feel like I'm so inoculated to being shocked by anything in this show now that I was just like, I kind of like, okay, let's just see where this goes. And I occasionally go down like serial killers and stuff, and just, I don't know, it's like watching a car crash or something, you know, you just can't look away. So I don't want to look, but also, what the fuck? So I was interested from that point of view, to just be like, okay, here's somebody who's gonna have a take on it, other than just saying, oh yeah, this person, I don't know, was it John Wayne Gacy? John Wayne Gracie is just a crazy sicko guy. He just does a bunch of crazy stuff, and he's just out there lone wolfing it. And so I don't know. I was kind of curious to see. Oh, okay, let's see. Plus, also there are some legitimate things around. I already knew about like MK Ultra, which is legitimately, as far as I'm aware, unless I'm completely uninformed, is true, and they did actually like perform.
I'm pretty sure that was real.
Yeah. So this is the problem with conspiracy theories. Not like the A440s, that's just completely batshit insane. but sometimes conspiracy theories are true.
Well, the thing is, like, and people conspire.
Yeah, exactly, all the time. Yeah. And so, yeah, and that makes me feel like, okay, you can't be completely dismissive just because something's a conspiracy theory, because maybe it's a legit conspiracy theory, but these days you can almost use the term conspiracy theory to out of hand dismiss something as like patently like prima facie untrue. And I think that's not a smart way of dealing with things, because then, you know, things like the Gulf of Tonkin or MK Ultra would just be dismissed as, oh, well, it's a conspiracy theory. But those things actually happened, right? So, yeah. But also, I'm still going in pretty skeptical. I don't know. I just assume that somebody's going to write something to this effect is, I don't know, not 100% there. That's not this, given some of the other books we've read. Yeah. What about you, Jack?
So I'm maybe not in the ideal space to read a book about international pedophile conspiracy theories, because I've just had a child. So I was like, I wasn't completely in the mood for a really long time about it. Granted, only about a third of the book, like David said, the first third of the book is pretty solid pedophile conspiracies. But then they go on to other stuff like serial killers, and actually mostly serial killers. There's a bit of like, there's Satanism and drug dealing woven throughout, but you know, the main focus is pedophiles and serial killers, and I think the Phoenix program in Vietnam, which again
never
was
well explained. Like several of these, it assumes background knowledge.
Yeah, he never explained that, so I had to look at Wikipedia to work it out. We can talk about it later, but again, it's something. Phoenix program is something that sounds like a conspiracy, but seems fairly well documented that it actually happened. So, I wouldn't say I was ready to dislike the book going into it, but I wasn't in the mood for something like this. I was peripherally aware of this book because it had been recommended a few times on our Discord server. I think most of those times were by Robert, aka Fake Gamer Boy. Shout out to him, who keeps suggesting particularly deranged books to us. So I was kind of aware of it. I recalled the front cover. I recalled the title of the book. I knew what the book was generally about. I knew that it had something to do with trying to tie together serial killers, mind control, and pedophiles. But I guess I was somewhat interested to see how the author tied those things together. And I guess, spoilers, he kind of didn't. You, the reader, have to do quite a bit of legwork to stitch together all of these different fuzzy-edged puzzle pieces he leaves you with. With a bit of work, I think you can piece together what he's talking about. But anyway, so my expectations going into the book were that I would be getting I guess a more straightforward account of serial killers and pedophiles than I did get. I wasn't expecting quite as much Satanism or drug dealing as I did get. I also wasn't expecting to get quite so many accounts of court battles. And the associational logic in this book was stronger than I thought it would be. Granted, I haven't read many conspiracy theory books like this, so maybe this is part of the course for that type of literature. But this book struck me as particularly free associational. It was a strange blend of, at times, what felt like very frivolous free associational logic. Particularly, he has a knack for noting that when say an event happens, and he'll note, oh, this happened 3 days before the anniversary of Hitler's birthday, or this happened the day after Walpurgis Night, or this happened a week before the spring, the spring equinox, or something like that. So that sort of logic is combined with, because I didn't fact check everything in here, but combined with what seems to be a recounting of freedom of information declassified documents, which I found quite disorienting. Combination of what seems like actual evidence and just schizophrenia.
Yeah. I did the same. I was fact checking earlier on more because I had more stamina, and everything was true. Even like things that I had not heard before or disagreed with, and he was always right when I checked him. To his
He
credit.
beats you into submission by the end of the book. By the end of the book, just the number of court cases, and he's going through all of the evidence and all of the procedural errors that he didn't like. And by the end of it, I was like, listen, I'll just take your word for it. They
Yeah,
didn't
those
do
last
this
3
properly.
chapters. Last thing on that though, part 3 is literally just it's called In Other News, and he just goes on
Yeah.
on 3 random things.
Yeah, the ending. I guess when we're talking about the real meat of the book, we can talk about the structure of it. But the structure was kind of fucked up. I feel like this could be a much better book with an editor. It would surprise me if an editor had seen this book,
Yeah.
because he doesn't even really tie everything together. He's got a chapter, which is not at the end, I note, but a chapter called Conclusion,
In the middle
which
of the
is which is close to the end, but not at the end as a conclusion normally would be, which doesn't tie things together. He just keeps talking about serial killers, but doesn't conclude anything. That's like, maybe I'm being too nitpicky, but that actually really irritated me.
Yeah. The book, and something we'll probably talk about more, is just like the way I think he drops information on you is a bit irresponsible. But I can see is also why I think this book is so popular, because it beats the shit out of you. It literally
Yeah.
MK Ultra conditions you, because it just beats you and overwhelms you with all these things, and you check it. Oh my god, this is freaking true. And then you more and more and more. And I think that is to its credit and its detriment in terms of its virality, because it's so toxic and it has such a profound impact on your psyche. But then also in terms of the facts themselves, because I think he undercuts himself with some of those free associations you mentioned, Jack, and he undercuts himself with his lack of clear conclusion of what is known versus what he suspects and his theory is. Because I think the Satanism aspect is very critical, and some of his other elements are very critical, but he doesn't tie it together for you And, you know, I went and did some additional research that refreshing myself on a few things, researching some things that made the picture clear in my mind, but he demands that of you, and it's why I struggle to know if and I know we're not there yet, but whether I'd recommend this to someone. And another read that I might be following this, and I've heard is the better version of this. Shout out, quadruple shout out, friend of the show, Eric's Han mentioned as well. He is reading Eye of the Chicken Hawk, I believe it's called, that I've heard is a tidier summary of this, but it's drier. Eric said he paused midway through because it's so depressing. But
I saw the cover of that book, and it's basically just a whole page of bubbles linked with various arrows, and I thought I can't fuck with this. I'm not touching this.
I told Eric, so like maybe in 2 or 3 months I'll be refreshed.
Just give me a bit of a break, because what you said, David, about this book beating the shit out of you is true. This book's an ordeal to get through. This is not an easy book, and it's so most of the books we read on this show are not easy. And there are many different strains of difficulty with books. It's not a conceptually difficult book. It's just difficult because of the volume of information he hits you with on every page without integrating it for you. It's just getting bodied over and over and over again with a tidal wave of raw facts. So, in terms of context for this book, I guess we'll tie together context and a question we always ask on the show, or ask more recently. What's the problem situation that this guy is trying to solve? So, maybe we'll go with context first. David, you mentioned, either while we were recording or before recording, the concept of an information hazard. Can you talk a bit about what that is? Because this book is a fairly good example of that.
Well, you guys may know better than me. I know it through secondhand interactions, but an information hazard essentially being something that is almost like toxic to know to you personally, and that it has a communicability so that you spread the information hazard, or even inclination to spread the information hazard to other people. Like I think the classic example is like nuclear proliferation, like the idea of how to produce nukes. And in this case, I would say the information hazard is like a deep sense of psychological insecurity of knowing some of these things. Because reading this book, you fundamentally you are coming to a fork in the railroad here. You either have to say, and this is just the first section, you either have to say pedophile networks do exist and have an ability to grow and control people in political influence, or you have to say, I do not believe that. That's complete bunk. And I think after reading the first chapter, I think it's hard to say there's not some smoke from that fire. And that's a profoundly terrifying thing to have to come to grips with. That I think a lot of people meme about, oh, Epstein Island, hee. There's a lot of, but there's a really profound.
It actually happened.
It happened. It's like inarguably it happened, and there's really profound consequences and like ways that should affect your conceptualization.
And then he just happened to kill himself in prison when the guards weren't present and the security cameras stopped working.
Yeah, as many of the other people in this book did. Like, there's a lot of people that just killed themselves really conveniently in this book.
So I think one of the key points to highlight with the information hazard stuff is that it's considered information hazard if it's true, but for some reason it's still harmful to know.
I guess the thing is though, like on that, could it be an information hazard even if it's not true? That it's just a mimetically powerful piece of information that self-replicates for whatever reason. And so long as it's harmful to you and it spreads, if it's true or not is actually not that important.
Yeah, it's like belief hazard versus info hazard. I guess info would be it's like technically true, and belief hazard is like, I guess anything would be a belief.
I've been reading Cyclonopedia at the moment, so I'm perfectly primed for this. I'm dreaming about the Gog-Magog axis and the fog of war with anonymous materials embedded in dust.
Still can't believe you named your child Gog Magog. That was a bold move.
She'll love it when she's older.
Just the man I've been looking for.
Jeez,
And
am
then
I
in
glad
terms,
to see
so
you.
what?
I'm halfway dead.
I guess
here.
we'll
So,
get into what
how
the
did you
problem
end up in
situation
this
this guy
mess?
was
I
trying to
tried
solve
unlock
in
the safe
writing this
the
book.
meeting room at the VIP
Also,
area,
while we're talking about the main
but I
content,
don't have
but
a
we can
combination
preface
for it.
everything with,
I think one of the
in
girls on the
general,
second floor knows the
why was this
combination.
book
Let
written?
me
Like,
help
what's
you
this
out
book
of here.
trying to address?
I think it's awareness. You know, I think he's aware of these trends. He probably, some of them which are maybe not as real as others, but I've had a similar experience becoming aware of some of these things where you want to just scream it from the mountaintop, and then, like most people, you realize a lot of people just are not receptive to it, and so he crafted this very, in his opinion, it is well researched in many ways, just not maybe the best formatted a way of. I think the mission is to wake people up to specifically the CIA, and in his own words, it would be the Phoenix program being brought to the United States.
Yeah, I guess this ties into the information hazard thing, doesn't it? It's of the nature of an information hazard that you try to spread it, and this man was more dedicated than most in that he researched this and wrote a flawed but a very seemingly comprehensive book. I guess when we get into talking about the book itself, I can go into this in more detail, but I find it very hard to evaluate these sort of theories because, like, I'm not motivated enough to go through point by point that he makes and try to verify it myself. So by the end of it, yeah, I was just accepting what he said. It was like, yeah, I guess so. I guess all these people are linked to Anton LaVey, and we're all treated at the same psychiatric facility in California. And after going there, had their personalities changed, developed copperophilia, and were hearing voices in their heads and started killing people on the basis of command hallucinations.
You were conditioned.
Yeah, one might even say they were programmed to kill.
Yeah.
Hey, alarm!
So I guess this book is almost the ultimate
We have a
manifestation
situation.
that the information hazard made him write this tome that has then inspired so many more people to about this information.
Yeah.
It's also interesting reading it in light of, you brought up the Epstein pedophile island. In light of that, like a more contemporary, well-documented case of what seems to be elite pedophilic malfeasance that was repeatedly brushed under the rug until it exploded, and then like the alleged single man at the center of it disappeared or conveniently killed himself. So reading it in light of that is unsettling, I'll say.
And stuff that I think goes on, because remember, this ended in 2002, so there's several things that he's not aware of that we've seen. Like, yeah, he never had to factor in Epstein. He never had to factor in, are you guys familiar with Ed Buck?
No.
He's a more recent one. And I don't think he's as powerful, as potent as them, but he was the guy he's big in California politics. It wasn't big, but he suspected that he was a procurer of people in like small party politics that also similarly delivered hot shots, like killing drug doses to men he would have sex with. And he was always protected by political figures. Like, and he killed like 3 or 4 dudes. Just to say, like, there is signs of these, but there are instances where basically intelligence and other people get caught with their pants like completely down. And so I would say the Franklin scandal to some extent is that. The Finders is absolutely, I think the Finders is actually an even more clear cut. If it wasn't for the level of media control that was exerted at the time of its exposure, that would be like the household name, which is exposed more in the FBI documents that came out in 2019, which he did not have available at this time, which is why I was a little frustrated the Finders didn't go quite as into the detail on the other connections. So he did suspect correctly that it had like larger satanic connections. Anyway, it's interesting. I don't know. I guess I'm itching to get into the meat of it. So I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, let's get into the meat of it.
Yeah.
How
I
they-
guess I would just preface by saying I'm more persuaded by the pedophycracy, whatever the word he uses. I'm more persuaded by that. And then the serial killer, I think there is something there, but I just don't feel like he's got it nailed down totally. And I have like some theories about the shapes it might have actually taken. But yeah.
I guess. Yeah, well, let's talk about the meat of it now. It's interesting, although I'll note before we do that, you talking about the different components of this book, because I feel like a lot of the isolated cases he's talking about here, I feel are appropriate, and a lot of them again are probably true, like Michael Crowe. That happened. It's never been explained why. So for those who don't know, Crowe was a Belgian, I think he was a serial killer and pedophile who was
mostly
imprisoned for raping a number of women, was released very, very early, went on to abduct, rape, and murder a bunch of children. And he had like 10 houses, and it was never explained how he had all of this, how he had all of these assets,
Watch out.
why he was treated so leniently by law enforcement for so long, and it turned into a huge scandal in Belgium. So there were massive protests. I think the justice system and was overhauled to a large extent in response to the protest about this case. So
There was a nationwide strike, is my understanding.
it was gigantic.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, so that's just one instance, but there are a lot of individual cases in this book of very suspicious, terrible things being uncovered, and then there being so many loose threads from them. I guess what I'm more skeptical is he feels a bit like he's reaching in trying to tie together so many different things in this huge, like what would be a global conspiracy of what seems to be an attempt to brutalize children using particularly sexual abuse to make them susceptible to dissociative identity disorder so that they can then be
We have a situation.
programmed by intelligence agencies so that then they will become serial killers which can be sensationalized by the media to scare the population
We have
into
a
control.
situation here.
That to me starts
We have a
feeling
situation.
like
Watch out.
too
Maniac alarm.
many
Hey, alarm.
reaches.
Yeah, I don't know if he argues. I guess I didn't read it as arguing it
We
was
have a
a
situation
kind of thing.
Well,
rape
that's
dungeon
actually
to
because we
serial
need to get
killer.
into this because this is the other.
Yeah.
This is a huge problem with the book that I think all three of us have already alluded to. Is he doesn't tie it together into a conclusion.
Yeah.
And so you, the reader, are kind of reaching around in the dark, and that's exactly what I was wanting to get onto.
Yeah.
So before we get into specifics, what were all of our interpretations of what he was proposing or hinting at was the unifying feature or unifying system of all of the different components? I've just spelled out what I think was at least part of it from my perspective. I'm still unclear actually what the ultimate goal was, because he'll say a few things like, oh, we're trying to bring the Phoenix program home. So in brief, David, you might know more about this than me, but I think the Phoenix program was a program during the Vietnam War in Vietnam that was basically a terror campaign against civilians to get them to give up Viet Cong fighters and Viet Cong networks, basically by threatening civilians' families, by torturing civilians, and then on the basis of information that was basically terrorized out of civilians, there were CIA assassinations and further tortures. And I think McGowan seems to be saying what the US was trying to do was to,
Leave
using
immediately.
this pedophile mind control program, bring that into the United States, so to terrorize the US population into submission. He also says some stuff about HIV being used to kill off people.
We have a situation here.
Wild. Yeah, because
I do.
stuff happened in Georgia.
I'll quote. I'll dig up the quote of that actually, because this is where he really weakens his case, and so
Yeah.
he'll say
just
things
throws
that
a
make
dart at
me
the
just
board.
immediately much more skeptical, because he'll pull out stuff like this. I also note This is in the context of he expresses radical doubt when it comes to many official versions of events, but when it comes to basically assembling narratives out of plot holes,
Welcome to our den.
so out of inconsistencies or unexplained things in the official narrative, he pieces together a narrative of plot holes, and he's extremely credulous when it comes to this. I quote, "There is another, even darker scenario that merits brief mention here, even if it is almost entirely speculative. Atlanta is home to the Center for Disease Control, CDC, a prime suspect among conspiracy researchers as to the origin of the AIDS virus. The Atlanta child killings began, strangely enough, just as the first cases of AIDS, yet to be identified, began surfacing in a few of America's big cities. There is a possibility that some of the young victims, known to be involved in sexual activities with both adult pedophiles and other children, were deliberately infected with the virus to track the progress of the disease and determine its communicability through sexual contact." And he then goes on to say that HIV is being used